York region is located in the traditional territory of many indigenous people, including Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, and the Métis peoples. In the treaty territories of Haudenosaunee, Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Williams Treaty First Nation. Today, this area is home to many diverse indigenous people, and we recognize their history, spirituality, culture, stewardship of this land. We also acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgian Island, the First Nation, as our closest First Nation community. So members of council, I was at the by the island where they go back and forth, and they've kept the because of the mild weather, they've kept the ship, that the boat, the ferry that goes across to the island open. And there's a lot of ice, but then there's a lot of people out on the ice still, ice fishing. So it's kind of interesting to see that ship go back and forth in the big piles of ice. So it's interesting anyway. So any disclosure of interest? I'm not seeing any. You can all use your hand. So I think I see Walter, I see Steve, I see Linda, myself. There's Mariel. Okay. Yeah, I think so. We have a quorum. Yeah, we're good to go. So any disclosure not being none, confirmation of public minutes of January 23rd. I asked Steve and Mariel to approve those minutes. Thank you. All those in favor? Against, the motion's carried. We have one presentation, and Mafalda is the gentleman on.
Yeah,
I see him.
so, I believe so.
Yeah, Jack's just coming on, Dr. Jack.
Yes.
And I don't see him yet, but I think he'll put his video on. There you are, sir. Good to see you again. I saw you about a week ago.
Yes, hello.
And you've been busy. I understand you're at the city of Vaughan here.
Yes.
About a week or so ago, or maybe it was last week, I'm not sure. But anyways, welcome, sir. I'll give you about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Members of council have seen this. I think some of the York Regional Police have seen your presentation. So please go ahead, and I will turn the floor over to you. So for about 5 minutes, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Chairperson Emerson. I appreciate the opportunity to make a deputation statement for about 5 minutes. First of all, I would like to thank the Chair and York Regional Police Services Board for this opportunity. I introduce myself as Dr. Jack Vozdilski. My deputation statement has 4 parts. Part 1 of 4, introduction. I am a resident of York Region, and my address is 9235 Jane Street. I am also a survivor of the mass shooting incident that occurred at 9235 Jane Street on the evening of December 18, 2022. I was in the building and escaped during the time of the mass shooting. So I apologize if at times some of these statements may be difficult for me to make. By way of profession, I am a subject matter expert in emergency management with an emphasis on man-made disasters such as terrorism and mass shootings. I am also a professor at York University in disaster and emergency management. By circumstance, I have both direct experience with surviving a mass shooting and also knowledge of the strategies and tactics that can be applied for management of such incidents. I am here representing myself, and my statement has 3 purposes. 1, to advocate for the provision of necessary community recovery support services. 2, to suggest that it will not be a question of if, but when another mass shooting occurs in the York region. So now is the time to learn from this mass shooting tragedy to better prepare for the next time. And 3, I would like to highlight some gaps that I have observed in the transition from response to recovery. The second part part 2 of 4 of my deputation is an acknowledgement and thank you. I would like to acknowledge the 5 neighbors of mine who were killed in the mass shooting incident. I would also like to acknowledge the neighbors who are suffering from physical injuries from gunshot wounds. And I would also like to acknowledge the hundreds of survivors who were residents in the building living here on the evening of December 18. And all of us were exposed to our own versions of trauma due to gun violence. Second, I would like to provide a thank you to the York Regional Police and other public safety first responders for their actions on the evening of December 18 to bring the violent shooting rampage to a close. Many building residents, including myself, were able to survive the mass shooting due to the actions of York Regional Police first responders. And again, I would like to emphasize to Chief McSween, to Chairperson Emerson and others, a public thank you to the York Regional Police for their bravery and professionalism provided on the evening of December 18, 2022. Part 3 of 4 of my deputation statement is opportunities and barriers related to community recovery from the mass shooting. For all involved, I believe that this tragedy can be a learning opportunity. I would especially like to highlight the positive impact that York Region Victim Services has had on this community of survivors by hosting meetings in the 9235 Jane Street building. I believe that the caring, the resources, and expertise do exist in the York region for providing adequate community recovery services, both on the individual and community level. I would also like to thank the York Regional Police for participating in an evening meeting with the city of Vaughan on Thursday, February 16, last week, where questions were provided, where answers to questions were provided to residents regarding various aspects of the mass shooting. I would also like to highlight a few barriers I have observed to community recovery. First of all, why did it take so long for community recovery and trauma coping services to be provided at the location of the 9235 Jane Street building? The first community meeting with victim services to take place at the 9235 Jane Street building was held on December 29, 2022. I noted that first meeting with victim services at the building site for survivors was held 11 days after the mass shooting. I repeat that the first meeting was held 11 days after the mass shooting. The action of victim services representatives making themselves available to interact with a large group of survivors should have happened much sooner than 11 days after the mass shooting. I also observed a situation where I questioned why victim and survivor resource centers were not established in the immediate aftermath of the mass shooting on the week of December 18. There was a need, a very stark need that existed for psychological first aid for many persons, including myself, to cope with the shock and trauma due to exposure to mass violence. And the timing of the services did not match with the need that existed on site. I also would like to observe, while it was greatly appreciated that York Regional Police did attend a meeting co-sponsored by the city of Vaughan last week on February 16, why did it take 60 days for such a meeting to take place? such information or such informational type community meetings should have taken place much sooner than 60 days after the mass shooting. Part four of my deputation is my conclusion. To this point, a certain degree of assistance has been provided to victims and survivors of the 9235 Jane Street shooting, and it has been much appreciated. However, I believe there is a gap in services provided concerning the transition from response to recovery with mass shootings in the York region. Again, the expertise and resources do exist to provide services to survivors of mass shootings, but in the case of the December 18 mass shooting, a gap existed in the timing of coping and recovery services provided, and a gap has existed in the amount of mental health coping recovery services provided after the mass shooting. So in the wake of the December 18 mass shooting, I ask that the York Regional Police Services Board consider how we can build upon what has worked right with the mass shooting response, and also attempt to fill the gaps that have existed in the mass shooting response to provide provision of resources to support recovery from trauma for the wide range of victims and survivors from this mass shooting. I thank the York Regional Police Services Board for the opportunity to provide this public deputation statement. That is the conclusion of my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor, and well said, and we will take your comments into consideration. Is there any questions to the doctor at this time? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to ask Linda and Mariel.
Motion. Yeah, motion to receive. Thank you. With thanks.
Thank you. Thank Linda, and seconded by Mariel. Okay, Walter, you have a question?
Just wanted to thank Dr. Rozdilsky for his timely messaging. I think there's important lessons to be learned. Full disclosure, he is a professional colleague, but I believe we stand to be well served by some of the comments he has directed to us and some of the resources he can offer us. Thank you, Dr. Rozdilsky.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you.
Chief?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Dr. Rozdilsky, hope I got your name right. First off, thank you for your comments about York Regional Police. We all share in our sincere condolences, not only to the families of this mass tragedy, but to all of the surviving victims as well, like yourself and people who are traumatized by this. We echo your comments in terms of the after supports for victims. And I can tell you there's a lot of work going on, not only in our organization, but provincially to discuss how victims are supported after these large scale events, which obviously we're not immune to. So just be assured that it is on our radar, and it is something that we take very seriously. And I also just lastly want to thank you for your attendance at the meeting last week. As I understand it, you played a key leadership role there in relation to the community. I know the deputy is on here, and he was at the meeting as well. So just sincere thanks from us to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you all. Okay, all those in favor? Against? The motion's carried. Thank you, Doctor, and have a good day, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman and Chief and board members. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Doctor. Good. Okay, members of council, members of the board is we'll go into communications, but before we do communications, I have one, and that is not on here, but I'm going to speak to it now before we go into communication. As some board members are aware, that Deputy Chief Robertson Rouse has recently announced his retirement after 36 years of incredible service to the citizens of York Region. Robertson's commitment, expertise, and dedication has been a tremendous, and the loss will certainly be felt at all ranks in this organization. Deputy Chief Rouse's last day will be in June, and his service will be formally recognized and acknowledged at May board meeting along with his retiring badge. As a result of Robertson's retirement, the board will commence the recruitment process for a successor. We will resolve into private session a little later today to discuss the process and we'll bring forward a decision in the coming days. We will have very big shoes to fill for Deputy Chief Robertson Rouse retirement, but we're all committed to selecting and hiring the best talent to fulfill the role. So Robertson, we'll have more to say in May. We just want to say thank you for your dedicated service over the years. And it really, I wanted to bring it out now before, because some people do go fall off. But I mean, it's very, we just want to make sure, Robertson, you are recognized and that we have received your retirement form and going forward. And so, Robertson, we just want to wish you all a good health. And like I say, we'll say more at the in the May meeting. So I'm going to ask Walter and Steve to just receive that correspondence going forward on this and accept. Well, we don't have to accept your resignation, but we will, because we understand that you have another chapter in life, and that's great. So, all those in favor? Against, the motion's carried. So, anyways, I know there'll be a lot more said. So, thank you, sir. So, anyways, members of the board, there's 3 correspondence. Are there any? The last one is a letter to the Prime Minister Trudeau, and the recommendation will be approved on behalf of the York Region Police Services Board, and Mafalda will direct that to the Prime Minister. I'll just get the motion on the floor for all the 3 correspondence. I did see Norma. Norma's here, and Linda. Do you want to speak to it, Linda? No, good. You'll second that. Thank you, Norma. Don't move by Norma, second by Linda. Good. No other questions I don't see. All those in favor? Against, the motion's carried. And then we go into consideration and adoption of reports. There are 11 reports. 12 reports, sorry, I apologize. 12 reports. Are there any report that a board member would like to pull at this time? Yes, Steve, go ahead.
Chairman, 8-1, please.
8-1, sure. Any others at this time? Any others want to be pulled? So Walter and Mariel, will you move the rest of those recommendations going forward? Thank you. All those in favor? Against, the motion is carried. Go ahead, sir. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is a substantial scope change with regards to the request, and the money doesn't kind of add up, because under the financials they talk about there's funding of 150 and then a variance to the budget of 250. That doesn't add up to the 590 that this is going to cost.
Okay, Jeff, or the chief. Jeff, I see Jeff. Come on, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. Good morning, and through you to the board chair. The financial piece to it is it was originally a partially unbudgeted project. When we did survey industry, we found that the costs were higher than we were originally anticipating. Where those savings, there will be offsetting in order for us to manage to the bottom line. Some of it will come out of investigative side house, because that's really where the costs are coming in. And we're also assessing the possibilities of applying for grants related to this initiative that could partially offset the cost, but we're unable to make that claim today, but we will be researching that over the spring.
But I think, Steve, I was right. You're saying the numbers just don't add up. Is that what your comment, Steve? Go ahead.
As I understand, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please go ahead. I'm just saying that, your recommendation is the total cost of 190 to 590, and you're going to borrow 250 or find 250 in savings or something somewhere, which is great, but you're still short if it's 490.
Oh, thank you very much for the clarification. Through you, Chair. The original $190,000 was completed in 2022 for a span of control review, and that's already occurred in the 2022 actuals. You'll be seeing a report on that next month.
Okay, Chief, do you want to add something?
I was only going to add that the total for this year is 400, which is the 250 plus the 150. So that's where we get 400, and that's how it adds up. The 190 was budgeted for in 22 and spent on the original project.
And just one last comment, because we're all in the same government field. This is like way over what a budgeted request was. Like very shocking in terms of because yes, we've had a lot of RFPs go out and they come back double, but this one's quite substantially over.
Yeah, I think Chairman, through you, if it's okay, and Mayor, what I can tell you is that the review that's going to be done at the front line is significantly larger than what occurred on the initial phase of this project. The initial phase of the project was just span of control in relation to supervisors. So what is the ratio of supervision to people in certain areas of the organization, primarily in the investigations and our CIB offices? What we're looking at doing now, though, is taking that in relation to another larger project, entire staffing project, which includes supervision not only at the front line, but also includes our overall staffing model and methodologies to staffing to make sure we have the right amount of people in the right places in the entire organization. So as you can imagine, that's a significant step forward, but also a much larger project to manage, which definitely ties into the larger jump on the scope change here.
And my final comment is just that when we procure, we should have a clear scope, because this is would appear different than the original scope. And I get it that we're doing more work, but we might have had a different outcome if everything was put in up front.
Chief or Jeff?
Yeah, I'll jump into that one through you, Chairman. Yes, unfortunately, sometimes when we do these projects, we realize after the fact that there's a ripple effect to some of the work that got done, and we couldn't really make any bona fide great decisions on the span of control without knowing, are we actually staffed appropriately across the board? And we had some initial discussions. This work was done way back when by another consultant, and it's been a long time since we've done it since. And we realized that in order to make some really good decisions on span of control and supervision at any investigative level, we're going to have to do it across the board. And that includes a full staffing model, either a change or rectify the numbers that we see. For argument's sake, in every district, there's a minimum staffing model. And we're not entirely sure with a lot of the changes that have gone on within the organization on efficiencies, if that staffing model is still correct. So it all does tie together. And unfortunately, we didn't have that bird's eye view at the front end, which is why we're here where we are today.
Thank you, Chief. I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, and seconded by Mario. Okay. Any other comments on it? Any others? Yeah, it's the way of life, I guess, nowadays, the way costs are going up and everything that we're doing. So yeah, it's a bit more alarming than normal. All those in favor? Against? The motion's carried. Members of the board, that completes all the reports. And now, is there any unfinished business at this time before we go into private session? Any unfinished business? Okay. Gonna ask Walter and Norma to move us into in camera. Okay, all those in favor? Against? The motion's carried. So we'll give you a minute to